What if you could hear your favorite song for the first time again? Introducing the all-new, reimagined Nissan Kicks. With an available Bose Personal Plus sound system that uses speakers in the headrest to create a 360-degree listening experience. You've never heard anything like this. Reimagine your music and your drive. Experience the all-new, reimagined Nissan Kicks for yourself at nissanusa.com today.
Available feature. Bose is a registered trademark of the Bose Corporation.
This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian makes the team collaboration software that powers enterprise businesses around the world, including over 80% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian's AI-powered software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, you'll have more time to do the work that matters. In fact, Atlassian customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
This is Optimal Work Daily. Creative Triggers by Colin Wright of ExileLifestyle.com. It feels wonderful to publish something. It's an experience I first had way back in high school when the web was still young, and when, despite having access to basic computer production software, my journalism class still taught the not yet phased out craft of physically laying out a page, every line of text on every page of the paper one by one, before sending it off to be printed for public consumption. There was something very honest feeling about that process, though I've come to learn in the years since that it's possible to experience something similar using digital tools. It's not the tangibility of these processes and materials that matters, but how invested you become in producing something that feels right, that is made with intention and purpose, that you're proud to have played a role in making whether or not your name is on it somewhere. I started out as a columnist and editorial cartoonist, and a year later took on more responsibility as the art and design editor. My written and illustrative work was periodically picked up and republished by the local city paper, but although that was flattering, it didn't offer the same creative resonance as the work published in our school paper. There was something special about having been involved with a project beginning to end, solving a million small problems, dealing with countless paper cuts and ink stains, publishing related battle scars, in order to produce something of substance before sending it out into the world. Like most school papers, ours wasn't impressive by the standards of other, bigger, well-funded and managed and staffed publications, but it was ours, and it allowed us to see how effort and frustration and pushing oneself to one's limits in terms of time and attention and skill can coalesce into a finished product, something you can marvel at in the aftermath and say, I made this. I'd always enjoyed making things, but before that moment, before that collection of journalistic adventures and minor dramas, I didn't realize just how much of a psychological trigger the act of producing and distributing would be for me. To make something and to be able to share that thing. My first business, started several years later while I was in college, was a culture magazine. I took what I learned back in my newspaper days, combined that knowledge with what I picked up while producing a pocketable, handmade zine, and ran with it. Running a business was not something to which I aspired. Entrepreneurship wasn't a sexy thing yet. Facebook was still just starting to happen, and Silicon Valley was dominated by buffoonish-seeming post-dot-com bubble holdouts, not hot, young digital rock stars. And all I really wanted to do was make something interesting and valuable and share it with people. The jobs I worked at the time, including doing all of the design work for a local glossy magazine, didn't provide that outlet. Getting into business was just a means to that end. This drive of mine is still evident today in essentially everything I do, and recognizing it has provided me with a trigger I can pull any time I'm feeling sluggish or uninspired, intellectually disengaged, or unsure of my next steps. The simple act of making something, of creating things that wouldn't have existed without my active effort and intention, feels good. It makes me feel alive. Being capable of sharing that thing, that creation, amplifies this feeling. Not all creations need to be shared, and the majority of my work, be it visual or written or whatever else, is never seen by anyone but me. But knowing I can disseminate the good stuff that bubbles up out of my creative efforts makes the whole process more vibrant. It's nice to think that I might be able to share some of that joy, some of that knowledge, some of that perspective with someone, perhaps many someones. Growth in any aspect of our lives is partly dependent on our exploration and understanding of what motivates us, what drains us, what can snap us out of mental funks, and what can help us endure even the most arduous, tedious, perhaps even agonizing aspects of whatever it is we hope to achieve. Everyone's fueled by something different, but through self-reflection and experimentation, it's possible to come to know our levers and switches and to slowly but surely label them for more convenient future use. There are many pre-packaged tools that can be helpful in this regard, but one-size-fits-all approaches to productivity and creative satisfaction are almost always non-ideal, at least in isolation. It's a good idea to experiment with the tools and techniques and life hacks shared by others, but don't become discouraged if they don't work for you, if they don't stick, or don't align well with what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve it. Dabble and move on. And if you discover pieces of pre-packaged approaches that do help, or that nudge you in a positive direction, integrate them into your own custom-tailored method of making things without worrying about adopting that method in its entirety. You needn't fit cleanly under the cookie-cutter shape of someone else's methods and habits, someone else's triggers, just because they've turned them into an app, written a book about them, created a movement around them, or given them a name. Good branding doesn't imply universal value or utility. Alongside considering what's been done before in this space, it's worth taking the time to think deeply, to reflect on where you've been and what you've done, and on how you might do things better in the future. It's worth understanding who you are, who you might be, and your strengths and weaknesses, all without passing judgment. Discovering and then intentionally utilizing your creative triggers allows you to leap any hurdles you might encounter and to more confidently tap into and utilize your internal resources on demand. You just listened to the post titled Creative Triggers by Colin Wright of ExileLifestyle.com. We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search. Match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging. 93% of employers agree. Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy because Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/startup. Just go to Indeed.com/startup right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/startup. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
And here we have travelers in their natural habitat enjoying guaranteed 4 p.m. checkout at fine hotels and resorts booked through Amex Travel, and they don't even see what's coming at them.
We're in. We got the table.
Yep, with Resi Priority Notify, they're alerted when hard-to-get reservations open up.
Reservation for 2? Save the best for last.
Thanks to Amex Platinum, the last day vacation brings yet another experience. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex.
And now thanks to Colin Wright, he is normally narrated on Optimal Living Daily, but if you want to hear his voice instead of mine narrating to you, he actually has his very own podcast. It's called Let's Know Things, where he puts the news into context. And checking out that podcast would be a great way to show your support for him. And a little bit of background info about Colin. He is an author, a speaker, and a full-time traveler since 2009. Since then, he's mostly chosen where to live by polling his audience. He's also a well-known minimalist. To be able to be a full-time traveler back in 2009, he actually got rid of everything that wouldn't fit into his luggage. And he's got a lot to share with you, so come by ExileLifestyle.com for a lot more. But I think that does it for our episode today. Have a happy Thursday. Thanks, of course, for being a subscriber, and have a great rest of your day. I'm going to see you back here tomorrow for the Friday show, and that's where your optimal life awaits.